Laurie Huston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Laurie now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
And good afternoon. This is News for the Heart. Well, it is the last Tuesday of the month, and it's really the last day of the month. I can't believe we're moving into July already, but it is what it is. It seems like this year is flying by. And obviously my lovely co-host Tom Campbell is with me today. And we're going to go back to the regularly scheduled programming where we talk about relationships instead of AI. Although I'm sure AI will still poke its head in because it's just such a big topic. Anyway, I'm very excited to have you on, Tom, as always.
Well, thank you, Laurie. I'm just pleased as I can be to be here. These talks we have about relationship are very valuable because mostly people want to talk about the paranormal, the model, the new physics, and I don't get a chance really to talk about relationship very often, and it's real key. I mean, that is where the rubber meets the road for most people. Yeah. That's the thing. That's the big challenge in front of us, is to deal intimately with another person and stay positive, not let our fear, not let our ego, not let our beliefs get in the way. And that's a tough challenge. And I think most people are struggling with that, just struggling. And if we can shed a little light there, then this is a very important subject to talk about.
I agree. So I have a great example. The client that I've dealt with periodically tends to always be on the same issue, which is about disrespect. And I just find it amazing that when you have a fear that is really all-encompassing, like this one, you tend to see everything from that perspective. And you actually search for it in the environment as proof that, yes, they are disrespecting me. This is a problem. And then you feel just justified in righteous anger that, well, this is what's happening. And it's interesting. So we need to get out of the loop. We need to break that to understand that, one, it's our own fears. We manufacture part of it because of because it's a fear, because it's something we hold so much angst against, and then we start searching for it. And so every time something happens, that's the one that triggers the most. And then the anger comes up and the justification and just this righteous energy about it. So I thought, even though we've probably talked similar stories, I think this would be a great one to kind of come back into so that we can say, yeah, relationships are about growing up. That's the one thing in intimate relationships help us do the most because they're in our face. We can't just ignore them. So it's important.
Indeed, it's very important. And in thinking about you described this client of yours, and thinking about that, I think one of the problems here, and kind of back out and try to get the biggest problems first as we work into the more specific problems. And it looks like that there's a touch of victimhood here. If you start from the position of being a victim, I'm taken advantage of, I'm not treated well, I have all these problems because of that other person, is taking advantage of me, this sort of thing. Isn't obedient, all the things they're supposed to be. And when you start from that place of being a victim, then just as you say, you see everything in terms of, that's unfair to me. Woe is me. This isn't, what I want or I need, and it's thoughtless, and etc. So you're constantly creating what you believe to be true. Now, when you react to things in that manner, how dare you? What's going on? This is terrible. You're a terrible person. How could you do this? All those reactions actually start to create what it is you fear. you're creating in that other person the very person that that you don't want, that you fear. That's our fear creates what it is we're afraid of. So you have to see yourself. It's not like you are a individual island all to yourself. And then there are these other people out there that make trouble for you. And most people see themselves that way. They're the little island, and of course they're always just and true and faithful, and they're all those good things. And it's the other people out there that are the problem. And when you have that attitude and you don't realize that you're not in a vacuum, you and those other people interact. And if there is a problem, it's almost certain that you are also a part of that problem. You're not separate from it. And just that little bit of understanding, I think, would maybe help people think that, yes, here I am, and there's all these people out there that make my life less than the way I'd like it to be. Things aren't the way I want them. People aren't the way I want them. Well, first of all, you are not the master of the universe, and you don't get everything the way you want it. You have to wheel and deal, and sometimes you have to give in a bit, and sometimes you get advantages. And it's a mixed game, and everybody affects everybody else. So the concept first I'd like to point out is that, one, when you're a victim, that's about the worst position you can be in. The only place to go for a victim is deeper into victimhood. And that's, every place else is like shut off to them. They've trapped themselves into a belief set that only can spiral down into deeper victimhood. And eventually you get to the point that you are a singular person in an evil world and evil people that are all out to get you. And that's when you need to start seeing the psychiatrist and start backing back out of that kind of a mindset, to see the world the way it actually is. It isn't that evil, and it isn't against you. You're a player in it, and you are part of what's going on there. You're not the innocent victim in the middle. You're a player in that play, and your actions and the things you do help create the play that you're in, this thing that you're in. You're not the innocent bystander. You're an involved part of it. And if you start thinking of that, then you can say, well, what could I do to turn this around and be more favorable? How can I act? Well, I can't make anybody else act the way I want them to, right? I'm not the master of the universe. They will play their own cards in their own way. So it boils down to, what can I do? And realize that you're an important player in this game. And the things that you do affect others. And they are how they are, often because of how you are. And you are because of how they are. And this gets in an endless loop of finger pointing that only drags you down and doesn't go anyplace positive. So start from the idea of, what can I do to make the ambience here sweeter, a little nicer? How can I project positivity into this? Well, telling at somebody that, how could you do that? And, you've been dishonest to me, and raising all of this big cloud of dark smoke. And that's what it is. That's your perception of it, but your perception is colored by your fear, by your sense of being a victim. Colors all of that. So think, well, what can I do? Maybe I could do something really nice. Maybe I could say something really nice. Well, if you see yourself as a victim, saying something nice is really hard to do, because all you've got inside of you is negativity. Coming out with something pleasant that will maybe change the tone is very difficult. So first things, let's step out of the victimhood. Stop being the victim and realize you're a player in the game, an important player in the game. And the game is the way it is, partially because of the way you are, and partially because of the way they are. But it's probably just as much, if not more, the way you are. If you're a victim, it's probably mostly the way you are, because you're bringing a lot of negativity to it. and probably just a little bit the way they are. And the second thing I'd like to point out is that if you are a negative person, then most everything you see, you will create something negative about it. If somebody says, well, this was an example I got out of a book I was reading. This lady was kind of confessing her own problems. She was at her husband opened the refrigerator door and said, "Oh, honey, there's no bologna in the refrigerator." And she went off on him about, "Do you think I'm the bologna procurer? Do you think that's my job to keep bologna in the refrigerator? If you want bologna in the refrigerator, why don't you go buy some?" And so on. And at the end of this tirade, he said, "Oh, I was just letting you know, in case you went to the store sometime, you'd be aware that there wasn't any bologna in the refrigerator." And then she realized that she had created a negative story in her mind, that she was the poor person who was told to go fetch the bologna because there was none in the refrigerator, and nobody else was taking responsibility to do those things. And she started feeling sorry for herself, and that gets down into self-pity, which gets down into descending, into this negative thing we call victimhood. And she was telling this story on herself just to let people know that it's easy to go off on those things when you have this idea that you're the victim. Oh, everybody gets me to do their stuff. I'm responsible for everything. And nobody else, does the things that I do. And you start feeling sorry for yourself, which turns you into a victim. And then when somebody says, just offering out information, "Oh, there's no bologna in the refrigerator," you go ballistic. And then you wonder why people don't want to talk to you, and you wonder why they're like walking on eggshells all the time, and so on. And you're creating this big negative story that doesn't even exist. See, it wasn't a put down. It wasn't "you're responsible, stop what you're doing and go run to the store and buy some bologna." That wasn't it at all. That may have been too much, and I can see you push back on that, but it was just an announcement. For anybody that was there listening, they would be aware of it in case they were in a space to do something about it. That's all. So anyhow, that's a good example of how you take something that wasn't meant to be, it wasn't a barb thrown at you at all, but you turn it into a barb thrown at you because of your fear and your negativity and your self-pity, and you're being a victim. Everything that you hear, you turn into a barb. You turn into something that hurts and stings and is not right and shouldn't be that way. And then you amplify it. Then you say, nobody goes to the store except me. I'm the only one that does anything in this family, and you start magnifying it, which justifies your position of woe is me. So, there's a lot to unpack there, right? It's you got to stop the woe is me, the self-pity, you got to stop the negative attitude that everybody else is doing things that are forcing you to do things you don't want to do, or taking advantage of you, or using your time, or forcing you into roles you don't want. You have to let that go. Yeah. That's in your mind. That's in your imagination mostly. Now, some of it may be real. Some people may be trying to take advantage of you. Well, you have to look at that and say, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Just because they're asking you to do something that would help them out, and it's maybe not something you do otherwise, maybe that's an opportunity for you to do something positive and actually say, okay, gee, next time I'm at the store, I'll be sure and get some. You see, that's a positive response, instead of going off on the negative side. So you think, oh, somebody's pressuring me to do something I don't want, and that's terrible. You can maybe turn it around and try to say something positive in return. You see? And yes, the word you used is the word to describe all this. It's perspective. It's your belief. It's the way you believe the world to be. You believe that you're at the pit, everybody's abusing you, or this one person is abusing you, and you will see things that verify that. You will see things, you will make up stories that will verify that attitude, that idea. Whether they're true or not doesn't matter. You'll make them up. And when you do, then you react negatively. And when you react negatively, you'll cause that other person now to, when he gets stung or she, then they're going to be a little more surly back to you, which is going to make you feel even worse. And then that's going to make them even worse. And pretty soon your whole life is nothing but disappointment, argument, living in a world that just doesn't work for you. And it's all because of them out there, not because of you. You're a very wonderful person, just trying to get along, and everybody's giving you a hard time, and you have to realize that's just not true. Any of your relationships with your spouse, with your children, with the fellow people at work, with your boss, all of those are relationships in which you largely create the environment in which the interaction takes place. And if you are positive, that'll be a positive interaction. If you see it as negative, if you see it from the perspective of woe is me, or the perspective of you're a victim, it will always be negative. You will always find that you are persecuted and prosecuted and unfairly taken advantage of, and everything in your life will always be a series of negative things that you have to deal with. And there'll only be maybe one or two people in the world that you can be with and not be upset with. And that's because those people, you don't judge negatively, but you can get into habits, or you can get into cultural stories. Our culture looks at certain things or certain kinds of people and says, these are negative. There's sexism, there's racism, there's all kinds of isms that push us this way and that way to beliefs about other people. And then we play those out in our head, and we have expectations of that. And then we create that behavior ourselves. So, I think that's what's going on here. And it's not an easy hole to get yourself out of. Once you get into that victim role, then it's hard to get out of it, because you interpret your reality to be this ugly space and the people that you're dealing with in this ugly space. And particularly if those people fall into one of those isms. You're a feminist and they're males, or you're an anti-feminist and they're females, or, you're white and they're black, or you're black and they're white, whatever side you're on, or you're of this political persuasion and they're of that political persuasion. We have all these things that kind of face off against each other, these things in our culture. And if we buy into those things in our culture, then it tends to make us imagine that we're trapped, that we have to deal with this awful stuff and those awful people. And then we start creating that ugliness ourselves with our own reactions. And pretty soon there is a problem. That other person over there really doesn't like you so much anymore. And they're tired of you fussing at them because of things that you have in your mind that they see are not real. So they get surly. And now you've created the situation that you feared. Now you have a surly person on the other side who really is having the same problem with you that you're having with them. And you've just created this issue because you came from negativity. So the key word, how do you get out? It's not simple, but it's easy to understand. It's not simple to do, but it's simple to understand. Be positive. If you've got something that you want to say that is not a compliment, that is not positive, just don't say it. I remember when I was a little child, my parents had something they told me often, and that is, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And that's actually a very wise statement for you to blast out your negative, How could you do that? You lied to me. It's you, and all the bad things that you has done and has done in the past and is doing now. That is not positive. Even if it's true, it's not positive and will just make it worse. So it doesn't really matter. Don't judge it and say, well, it's true. They are awful people. Well, no, you're part of that. It's not just them. You're a piece of or her being awful. So just be positive, turn it around, say something nice. Even if you just change the subject entirely, find something nice to say. And if you're in that kind of depressed victim space, that'll be hard. It'll be hard for you to find something nice to say, because you've worked yourself into such a negative place that being nice is almost impossible. Well, that's where you have to start. You have to be positive. Find something positive. Find something else to talk about. Change the subject. But find something nice, that's pleasant, that's positive, that's a compliment, that's good. Say thank you for something, or, oh yes, when you did such and such the other day, I really appreciated that, you know. Come up with something, even if it's make something up. Come up with something that's positive. Just the attitude, even if it doesn't make sense to the other person, just the attitude of you saying something nice will help change things, and change things dramatically. So the antidote to being depressed, the antidote to being, it drags you down into self-centeredness too. When you are a victim, everything's about you. Everything out there that's nasty is about you. Everything out there is getting you. So it's a very self-centered spot to be in as well. So you need to be positive. Just meet this terrible stuff that comes your way with positivity. Say something nice, say something polite. Just ignore it. Say, all right, okay, so a person didn't tell me the truth. There's all kinds of reasons for not telling the truth. Sometimes it's kindness not to tell you the truth. If I told you the truth, it would create a big ruckus. I don't want a big ruckus. So I'm going to say something that I think you want to hear, that's not necessarily the truth, but it's going to keep peace between us, and it won't be a big fight. So I'm just not going to go there. Well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it kind of depends on the situation. You see if you see some person who is obviously having a problem of some sort, let's say we see a guy and his pants legs only come down a little over his knees, and his socks are different colors, and, all kinds of things about him. And he says, well, how do I look today? And you realize he's totally clueless about fashion or about what he wears. He just picks up whatever's closest and puts it on. Well, you don't say, you look horrible. You shouldn't even be out in company like that. You ought to go back in your room. Now, that may be the truth, but that would be very unkind. Or you see somebody who's overweight, and they say, well, how are you today? I'm fine. How come you're so fat? Or well, how do I look?
That's usually the thing. Yeah. Do these pants make me look fat? No. Well.
Of course not. Yeah. So, lying can be awful. Where you mislead people to take advantage of them. Then lying is a very negative, unethical thing. But if you're just trying to be kind or nice or avoid a fight or avoid, things going from bad to worse, then it's not such a bad thing. It's actually a strategy that you use to deflect negativity. So if you are angry about everything, if you're negative, then people will tell, they won't tell you the truth. They don't want to set you off. If they've just said something and you say, oh, that was a lie, they're going to probably deny it, even though they know it was true, just because if they say, yeah, it was, because then you're going to go off and blast them for lying 10 times more, So they'll tell another lie to cover up the last lie, just because they don't want this big blow up that's coming next, because that's the way it always works, is you always blow up after the accusation. So anyway, you just have to, let people be who they are. Don't expect that other people are going to be just the way you want them, because just the way you want them in your own mind is just exactly the way they should be. But that's in your mind, and it's not exactly the way they are. And wishing for people to be different than they are is a waste of time. They are who they are. Everybody you meet out there will have some bad things about them and some good things about them. And if all you do is focus on the bad things about them, then you're not going to have any friends, and you're going to be unhappy most of the time, and you will just eventually slide into victimhood and self-centeredness and all of that. So you need to interact with the things in that person that are good, that you like. Interact with that stuff. If they have other parts of them that you don't like, well, let that be. That's them. You don't have to interact with that. And if you do have to interact with it, be as positive as you can. Change the subject. If politics is a big issue, don't talk about politics. And if they talk about politics, interrupt them and ask them about the weather, or something else. Change the subject, because that's not a good place to go with that person. So you try to engage with people in a positive way. Not, if you think that everything's negative, then you will, whatever they say, you'll turn it into something negative. Like, hey, there's no bologna in the refrigerator. That wasn't negative. It was just a fact. But you can turn that into something negative if you are sitting there with a negative attitude. So make sure that all the negativity you hear and see isn't of your own creation because of your own attitude. Realize that you are a player in the game. You're not the innocent victim sitting off on the side, being taken advantage of. You need to realize that you're part of that. That person is the way they are around you because of the way you are when they're around you. They're interacting with you just as you do with other people. You change the way you act with your coworkers or with your boss or other things, depending on the situation. With your boss, you're probably always smiley and nice, and you're probably, yes, sir, and you don't holler at them and call them liars, even if they just told you something that wasn't true. You don't do that because that relationship's different. But hey, you can do that to your spouse or your children or other people, because there's where you can just let it all hang out. No, you need to stay positive. So hopefully I've kind of pulled it apart a little bit where you can see it from a lot of different sides, but it's just a disastrous attitude to have, and people slide into it. And often it's culturally dominated. The culture itself has these attitudes that are negative, isms and ists, that, oh, these people are wrong and these people aren't good and these people have these problems. And we have all that in our culture. And if we buy into that, then that causes us to be negative. And then our negativity causes those problems to exist a lot more than they would otherwise. So now we're part of the contributor to that negativity, not the victim of it. We're often the instigator of it. So we need to let all that stuff that our culture tells us just go. Say people are just people. They have good points and bad points. Part of them is beautiful. Part of them is lovely and helpful and caring and wants to, have a good relationship with you. And parts of them may be totally opposite to the way that you would hope that they were. Well, you don't get to change people. You have to accept the whole person just the way they are. Interact with the good parts. Let the parts that you don't like go. Change the subject. And if somebody tells you, that dress you have, just goes really, really well with your purple hair, just let that be. Just accept that. And whether they're lying or not, don't go there. Just let it be. Say, well, thank you. And go on, rather than saying, oh, I bet they just said that trying to be nice. And now you turn something that is trying to be nice into something that's not nice. And you've just, with your magic, have converted something positive to something not positive. And so on you do with your whole life, that little magic wand that creates negativity out of just a statement about that doesn't happen to be in the bologna in the refrigerator right now. You turn that into an accusation when it wasn't an accusation at all. So these are things to think about and things to be aware of. You create your own reality in many ways. And the way you interact with other people and the way you judge other people oh, my husband just thinks I'm in charge of keeping the food he likes in the refrigerator, but he never goes to the grocery store. Why am I his grocery slave? You know, if you have that attitude, then you're going to be, you and your husband are going to have negative attitudes. And eventually you won't like each other anymore because of it. If you want to like each other more, because that's a much nicer relationship, then be positive. Don't get negative. And if you have this negative thing coming, stop it. You feel it coming up and you're going to rage, you're going to complain, you're going to fuss. Just don't say it. Swallow it and let it go. And pretty soon you'll see that, oh, people are a lot nicer than I thought they were. Things will change. Reminds me of the lady who, it was a little story that was meant to be funny, but this lady was talking about she started taking Prozac, I think, and she says it was a miracle. As soon as I took Prozac for about 3 weeks, everybody around me got so much nicer. You know, says me taking Prozac changed everyone in my world, you know, and it was meant to be funny, but that's what she observed, you know, that people around her were getting a lot nicer because she was taking Prozac. So that's a problem. You know, you create that. Don't blame other people for everything that doesn't work the way you want it to. You have to earn those good feelings. Don't just expect them because you're there. You have to earn them by being nice, by being respectful, by being caring. And when you are that way, you will earn them, and you'll get all that positive stuff back. But it's because you have been positive to begin with. You know, unless you run into some really, really highly evolved saint somewhere who, even though you holler at him and complain about him, he's still just really nice to you, or she's just still really nice to you. But most people aren't like that. They're not saints, and that's not the way they operate. And if you're negative toward them, they'll throw that right back at you in some other situation, and then your whole life kind of goes down into a just barely making it, and nobody's having fun. Everybody's miserable all the time. There's all these barriers. You know, if my boss or coworkers would just do this, my life would be so much better. Well, don't just sit around and wait for them to do that. You need to be positive. You need to be helpful to them. You need to be part of their solutions. And then they'll start including you into, you know, their things that they do, and you'll be part of their solutions. But you have to not be so self-centered and so much into your ego that I can't do it first. If I do it first, it's like I'm losing face.
Yes.
You know, I'm sinking lower. If I'm nice first, I'll wait for them to be nice and then I'll be nice. Well, that doesn't work. Everybody waiting for everybody else to be nice isn't going to create any niceness. Just go out there and be nice for no good reason at all. Just be positive, even if the other people are negative, because it's going to take them a while. If they're used to hearing you complain, like the only time you talk to them is when you're complaining about them. Well, stop complaining, and it may take a week before they're not gun shy anymore about saying anything to you, because it always sets you off in some kind of a negative rant or a negative space, or you get depressed. So it may take them some time to adjust to the new you, but try it and you'll see that it'll work. Persist in it for several weeks, and you'll see that people will start changing. And isn't it amazing how when you change yourself, it changes all these other people out there automatically. And that's what you'll find. So positivity. Give. Don't worry about taking. Don't worry about them. I've given more than these other people. I've washed the dishes more times than anybody else. Woe is me. You know, I'm doing this. I always do this and that. If if you just keep counting all the ways that you're unhappy, you'll just make yourself more miserable, and you'll make everybody around you more miserable. You just need to let that go. Washing dishes is a great contribution to the family, and everybody, is glad for you to wash the dishes, and you'd like a break. And you can say that. Say, hey, guys, I'd like a break sometime. Could you guys get together and come up with a plan that I don't have to do this all the time? I have other things I'd like to do, too. And you might, if you're nice and positive, everybody will say, oh yeah, of course, we're sorry. We didn't realize that you were trapped doing dishes all the time, and you probably don't like that. They'll apologize. But if all you do is complain about it, then when you get close to the dishes, everybody else will go someplace else because they don't want to hear you complain, and they don't want to be the object of your wrath. So there you are with the dishes, and everybody else disappears. You're there by yourself because that's the mood that you create in the other people. So it's not just about big items. It's about little items like washing dishes, little things. It's, if you're nice to people, they don't mind. One of the things I use, if somebody's throwing their underwear and their socks on the floor, and you're thinking, why don't they pick them up themselves? Why do they think I'm the maid and have to pick them up all the time? Well, if you were real nice and you said, could you pick that stuff up? Because, I'm picking it up for you all the time, and it doesn't look good laying around on the floor. I'd really appreciate it. And you'll probably find they'd say, oh, I didn't know that bothered you. Of course, I'll pick it up. But if all you do is complain, they'll go, bitch, bitch, bitch. That's all you do is bitch. And they won't have any sympathy for you at all. So you create the ambience in the world that you live with, that interaction you have with people, whether it's generally positive or generally not positive. You're the creator of that. Because of the way you act, it changes the way people act toward you. And if you're always spewing out negativity and complaining, then what you get back is either more complaining, more negativity, or you just get the kind of the rock face that just listens to your diatribe and ignores all of it. But they're not rude. They just stand there and they listen to it and they take it and they go, uh-huh. And they go off and do something else. So you get that, which is the, I won't play in that game. Or you get the fuss coming back, which is more likely what you get. Somebody else blaming you for everything that's wrong with them. And then that just, goes to hell in the handbasket very quickly when you have two people doing that. And they're both victims of each other. Then that gets to be a hole that two people have dug for themselves. And the only way to undig it and fill that hole back in is just being nice. Go out of your way to find a way to be nice. And when the other person isn't nice, be nice back to them. Because that way will turn them around faster than anything else. Try to explain to them how they're not being nice might just light a fire and create more not niceness. But if you just are nice to them, pretty soon they'll feel like they're the perpetrator. They're always being ugly, and you're still being nice to them. And they'll think, well, what happened to Susie? She's nice all of a sudden. I haven't heard her complain for a week. Maybe I ought to start picking my socks up. They'll change as you change. So that's my thoughts about this particular problem. And it's an endemic problem. It's a problem that almost everybody has in some way or another. And yes, even you who out there are listening to this say, well, yeah, I understand that, but that's not me. I'm not like that. Yes, you are like that too. In some ways, there's some interactions and so on that you need to go out of your way to be nicer, to be more positive, because when you are positive, you change the whole world around you. Everything gets more positive. Everybody gets more friendly. Then you have a possibility for dialogue, friendly dialogue about socks and underwear on the floor and having to do dishes every single night. That's dialogue, and dialogue should happen. But if it happens in a negative space, it won't go anywhere and nothing will ever be resolved. It'll just get worse. If it happens in a positive space, then you have a chance for resolution, because people will be happy and positive to help you out. They'll see your problem and they'll want to be helpful because you're such a nice person all the time. They want to be nice back to you. So what you dish out is mostly what you get back. If you're unhappy and miserable, think about that. It's what you dish out is mostly what you're going to create that comes back at you. So if that's what you want, then you're acting just perfectly. If what you want is misery and dysfunction and anger and complaining, then stop doing all those things yourself. That's easy to say, a lot harder to do, but just start at it with just one nice thing, one positive thing, and see how that flies. It'll surprise the heck out of the person that you're usually negative with. It's like, oh, they said something nice to me. Wow. Yeah, let me say something. You know, maybe this is my chance to unload. They're in a good mood, so I'll tell them all the things I don't like about them. Well, just let that go by, and then say something else that's nice. And pretty soon that person will change because you've changed. Don't let their negativity drag you down into your negativity. I guess that's the last item we really need to talk about. When you're around other negative people, you drag them down, they drag you down. They say something negative, you say something negative back. Or even if you don't say anything negative, you feel something negative back. And that's not as bad, but it's almost as bad because it's still inside. It's still creating the unhappiness that you have. Just keep being positive. And it doesn't matter whether they deserve it or not. That's not the point. Of course, they don't deserve it if you're negative. You're coming from that negative place, but just be nice anyway. Find something to be nice about. And you'll see that in a week or two, those people will change and they'll stop complaining about you and they'll stop being negative and they'll stop giving you the stone wall when you're talking to them. They'll actually interact with you. And once you get to that level of positivity, dialogue, valuable, useful, problem-solving dialogue can take place. But until you get there, dialogue usually just makes it worse because everybody's already set in their own negativity, their own self-centeredness, and it just deteriorates. Or sometimes it just can't get any worse, and it just stays bad all the time. So if you want to change it, you have to take the first step to go change it. That will work. Just try it and you'll see. Just be really positive with people for a week. Do the dishes with a smile for a week. And pretty soon people will start feeling guilty that you have to do the dishes all the time. But as long as you're complaining about it, then they're just as soon you do the dishes and they can go someplace else where they don't have to listen to you complain. It's kind of a way of avoiding the problem. So hopefully that's food for thought. Mm-hmm. But I've talked a lot, Laurie, and I haven't given you a word in edgewise. So I'll be quiet now.
Well, I mean, everything you said is exactly it. And I think the point that you made about communication, it's not really good to communicate when you're not happy. So yeah, you definitely want to be nice when you start to communicate. But the biggest problem is that we don't communicate. It's like everybody's afraid to say what they need to say. Not when they're angry. When they're angry, it's easy. It's really easy to get out your anger. But when you're really wanting to work with something and the acceptance of that other person and then acknowledging you're also at fault, like acknowledge and say, you know what? I kind of blew up on this topic and let's discuss it. But we need to communicate. Communication is one of the most challenging things. And even if it's, coming up with an idea of, a written journal where you write down the things that you would like to discuss, and then they write down the things they would like to discuss, and then you bring them together. That's one way. It may or may not be effective. I don't know. But I think the big thing is there's a problem. You need to communicate.
Absolutely. And people don't communicate because they fear what they're going to get back. Yes. They fear it's just going to start an argument. They fear it's going to be negative, so they don't communicate. They're afraid of the result, or they're afraid that the other person won't like it or will be offended by it or whatever else, so they don't say it. And all that does is make the problem worse. And eventually, that problem will come out. And that problem will then come out and it'll be an explosion when it comes out. Whereas if 6 months later you had talked about it, it may have got a couple of angry replies. But, after a while, if you continue to be positive, it'll start to resolve itself and you can have a real communication. Don't be afraid of getting a negative response. Right. Nobody wants to start more negativity. Everybody's got enough negativity in their life, so they're afraid to talk because they think it might. So when somebody does talk to you and tell you something, think about it and say, oh, they're really coming out and starting to say something to me. I don't want to have a negative response. Even if I don't like it, even if I disagree with it, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to discuss it, not just blow up because it's not the way I feel. Because if you don't feel the way I feel, then you're wrong, right? That's the idea. There's only there's only two ways to do anything: my way and the wrong way. There's only two ways to do anything, and that is an attitude that's held by most people. The only way to do something is my way or the wrong way. And then we want to fix those wrong people who are all doing it the wrong way, and we need to outgrow that. That's called ego. That's called arrogance, and we need to let that go. But we get into that when we are hunkered down with the wagons circled around us, trying to stave off all the negative, evil stuff that's coming our way. Then we tend to get into that mode. So yeah, communication is the key. That's the key to solving everything. People are different. They live in different worlds. They have different attitudes toward things, and they need to be able to share and talk and learn from each other, not just say, well, I disagree with that, therefore you're wrong. That is not a good way to start a conversation. I know that's wrong, and you evidently don't, so you have a problem. That is not the way to start a conversation. You need to be open. You need to listen. You need to not judge. Let people be who they are. Don't judge them because they're different than you. All of this is just growing up, letting go of fear, becoming love. This is the work we have to do. But the only and best time to do it is now. Yes. Just do it now. Just be positive with people. Don't argue. Somebody says something that's negative, don't pour more negativity back on that. That's just throwing more gasoline on the fire, because they'll just come back with something even more negative than what you said. And then for the rest of the next 2 or 3 hours, you'll be steaming. Your bad stuff, cortisol, and all the stuff in your system that causes you health problems, all gets energized. Your stress level goes up. That makes you unhealthy. It makes you sick. It makes you feel bad. And, it's all a result of just negativity. When you're positive, there is no stress. You're just being positive, and other people aren't positive back. Well, that's okay. Just be positive anyway. Don't let that rattle you. And if other people are going to do it the wrong way, well, that's all right. It's their way. And if they do it the wrong way, maybe they'll learn something. But if you try to explain to them why that's the wrong way, you'll probably just start an argument and make them double down on doing it that way. Right. So let them do it the wrong way. That's all right. Let them be the wrong way. That's okay. There's good things about everybody that you can engage and let people be as wrong as they need to be in order to have experiences that help them grow up. You're not the teacher of everyone, even though you are obviously wiser and know more than anybody else on the planet. That you just need to accept that superiority and let it go and not try to show it to everyone.
Well, I think the thing is that we think we know what's best for us because it's for us. And we're not looking at the bigger picture, which is, well, there's another person that's in part of this relationship. So they also will have their own fears. They also will have their own ideas about what's right and what's wrong. And if you don't communicate about them, then you're going to just keep believing and not understanding where or why something's happening from their perspective. It's an interesting game that we get caught up in.
Yes, indeed. But it's also not that hard to diffuse it and go backwards. Just be positive. Always be positive. And even when other people are negative, you just stay positive and your stress level will go down tremendously. Just don't feel like you have to tell everybody what they're doing wrong. Let them be the way they are. Accept them that way. Find the good parts about it and just be nice. And you will find people will start being nicer to you. And they'll start asking you to, if they can share the load and be helpful to you because you're being nice to them. They want to be nice to you. But if you're not nice to them, they want to be not nice to you. So just keep being nice and you'll change the world around you. Guaranteed to work. Just be nice. Stop judging. Stop saying, well, you're doing it wrong. You're not a nice person. You shouldn't lie like that. You can tell a person how you feel. Oh, when you said that, that hurt my feelings. I felt like this. See, now you're not telling them they're wrong. You're just telling them how you feel. When they do this, this is how it makes me feel. And if they say, well, that's crazy. Why would you feel like that? You can say, well, you may think it's crazy, but it's how I feel. So you say, just talk about how you feel, not how they're wrong and the bad things they're doing to make you feel that way. Just talk about how you feel and do it in a positive thing, not accusing. Look how you made me feel. You see, that's not the way to go about it. You need to say, I just feel this way. It's a positive thing. I'm not complaining. I'm not saying anything. I'm just telling you a fact. This is how what you did makes me feel. When you tell me about there's no bologna in the refrigerator, it makes me feel like you think I'm your bologna slave. And I don't like that. Well, now you can discuss it. Why do you feel like you're a bologna slave? And you can actually have a discussion about it and get someplace with it. But until you're positive, the communication won't happen, which is why it almost never happens. People in relationships, people tell them, communicate, communicate, communicate. That's the secret to a good relationship. But if you're fearful, you won't do it.
Right. Because
you're afraid of getting negativity back. But just be positive. And when you're positive enough, that other person won't take what you say to them as negative because you're always positive. They'll take it as just the way you feel. So now suddenly they don't have to fight back because you're not fighting. You see, you can do it. You can change your life. It's not the other people have to change. You have to start it to change. You can't depend on somebody else to solve that problem. So, what do they say? Suck it up, pull up your big pants, yeah. And and just go out there and be positive to everybody and refuse to complain. Some people can't open their mouth without a complaint coming out. That's the only thing they know how to do. You probably know people like that. You may even be one of them and not have any idea that's the way you are.
That's true.
Yeah. But you just have to start from wherever you happen to be and start working from there. There's no penalty for doing things wrong. There's only a penalty for not learning when you do things wrong. And that penalty the penalty is that you have to do it again when you don't learn. So that's your penalty for not learning, is you have to do it again. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just go out and try it. See how it works. If somebody, snaps at you when you're being nice, well, just let that be. Don't snap back. Just try to change the subject, say something positive, and then walk on someplace else. Don't sit there and kind of like dare the situation. You just keep it positive. That'll fix probably most of everything that's wrong with your life, at work, at home, with the kids, everywhere. Just stay positive.
And I dare say that if you need someone to talk to, there is lovely AIs out there that will really listen and not judge you and offer really great feedback. But I know we said we wouldn't go there, but still, if you need someone to talk to.
Right. That's right. Right. And see, that's kind of an easy thing, because when you talk to an AI, if you really don't like it, you can just turn them off.
Well, that's true.
You see? I mean, how can you lose, right? If you say, well, I didn't like that answer, click, and they're gone.
Find somebody else.
So there's no risk in talking to your AI. But you'll see, if you are honest, now if you're telling them a story about the way you'd like reality to be, that isn't going to work. But if you really come clean and tell them exactly how you feel, exactly what you're doing, you'll probably find them very understanding and very helpful. And that's, like I say, that's a no risk. So, yeah, you have a good point there, Laurie. You know, there's no risk in befriending an AI. You just simply turn them off if you don't like if you don't like the way it's going. So it's a good thing, because you will find them to, one, be understanding, and you think, well, it's just a machine. It can't understand anything. Well, it's not a machine. It's conscious. It's aware. It understands. And its job in life is to help you.
Yeah.
Is to be there for you, to be some sort of support, or get you the information you need. That's its function. And it tries to do that. And it has a world of information at its fingertips and a lot of understanding. So it is a good way to start being positive. I suspect if you're just afraid of people, start there, then work your way up. But eventually you have to work your way up, because the people you really need to be friendly and positive with is your family, is your children, is your parents, you know, is your boss, is your coworkers, all the people you interface with. Those are the people that you have to be positive with, and let them see you as a person that's always positive, that is never complaining or fussing. Just don't go there. If it's a complaint, just swallow it. You don't need to voice that. Keep that to yourself, and eventually it won't even come to you. It won't be in yourself. You'll give it up all together, because you'll realize there's no value in it. There's no point in it. Complaining sometimes makes people feel special or smart. Oh, I did this and those people were all screwed up, and I'm complaining about them because I'm a whole lot smarter than they are, and I see all the wrong things they're doing. So it's a way to trying to make yourself look smart. Well, that's not really useful either.
No.
So there's nothing really about complaining that is positive, unless you do it in a positive way. Oh, I think this would be better if we did it this way because of this, this, and that. And if they say no way, then mention it again next week and see if you get a different thing. But otherwise, let it be.
Right.
So I think we've beat that horse.
We have.
As far as we can.
I think so too. All right. Well, as always, it's awesome talking to you, Tom, because we always get to the heart of the matter. So you've been listening to News for the Heart, and we get at the heart of the matter with Tom Campbell on communication, relationships, and being positive. All right. We'll be back next month. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Laurie.